One Bitcoin, 21 million units. It doesn't exist in the palm of your hand. It doesn't sit in a vault. It doesn't shine. It has no weight, and it never ages. In 2010, a programmer spent 10,000 Bitcoin just to buy 2 pizzas. 17 years later, a single Bitcoin can buy a fortune, or sit in the strategic reserve of a superpower. Same unit, same source code, but the purchasing power has shifted billions of times over. Why? This video isn't about numbers dancing on a stock ticker. It's about the real value of human labor and energy compressed into digital form. We're going to carry this unit through the eras, from Satoshi's Genesis block to the age of global financial institutions. And at each milestone, we will ask the same question. How many days of work does it take to earn it? The answer will change how you view money, effort, and your own future more than any economics textbook ever written. Prepare yourself. We are remeasuring the world. Now let us journey through the eras of Bitcoin together. First, the Genesis era, 2009 to 2010. The labor of a personal computer. January 3, 2009. While the global financial system was reeling and governments were preparing massive bailouts for banks, an anonymous entity named Satoshi Nakamoto created the first block of the Bitcoin network, the Genesis block. Satoshi embedded a single message into that block, quoting a headline from the Times newspaper. Chancellor on brink of second bailout for banks. It was a stark reminder of the failure of the fractional reserve banking system and the very reason Bitcoin was born, a system that required no trust. At this time, Bitcoin had no cash value. There were no specialized ASIC miners, no multi-million-dollar mining farms. To earn 1 Bitcoin, you didn't need manual labor or a pickaxe. You simply turned on a personal computer in your bedroom for a few minutes. On October 5, 2009, the value of Bitcoin was established on an exchange for the first time. $1 was equal to 1,309 Bitcoins. This figure was not driven by speculation, but was calculated based on something very real: the cost of the electricity a computer consumed to mine it. Consider the math. At the average wage of a worker then, you only had to work for less than 10 seconds to own 1 Bitcoin. In this era, the stored labor within Bitcoin was nearly zero. They were nothing more than grains of anonymous digital sand. But then an event occurred that would change the definition of its value forever. But to understand why this measuring stick became so formidable, we must return to the moment it was worth next to nothing. May 22, 2010. The first commercial transaction in cryptocurrency history. 10,000 Bitcoins for 2 pizzas worth $25. At that moment, the stored labor of 10,000 units was equal to only a few hours of a baker's sweat. Bitcoin was still just digital sand, anonymous and insignificant, something people gave away by the handful. Yet the law of scarcity was already written in code. 21 million units. Exactly. Just like gold, to obtain them, the world would have to pay a price in real time and raw energy. The seed was sown. The measuring stick of labor began to move. In July 2010, the price surged tenfold in just 5 days. By 2013, it reached a staggering record of $1,242. Suddenly, Bitcoin was no longer a free hobby for office laptops. To claim it, the world began investing in high-power GPU rigs and specialized ASIC chips. Labor was no longer just time. It became an investment of capital and relentless energy consumption. To find a proof of work, miners had to sift through trillions of numerical sequences. The shift was total. The same unit that cost mere seconds of your life in 2009 now demanded many months of your real-world wages. But as real value began to solidify, the shadows of skepticism grew even longer. February 2014. The world's largest exchange at the time, Mt. Gox, filed for bankruptcy after losing 850,000 bitcoins. Trust collapsed instantly. The price plunged from its heights to a staggering $152. The media wrote endless obituaries declaring that the Bitcoin experiment was over. But while human institutions crumbled, Satoshi's protocol marched on. Every 10 minutes, a new block was still created, unyielding to the skepticism. Bitcoin had proven a brutal truth. Trust can perish, but energy and mathematics are unbreakable. The era of doubt was ending, giving way to a fierce civil war that would redefine the future of money. Rising above the media's constant obituaries, Bitcoin entered a turbulent maturity, transforming from a fringe experiment into a financial force that could no longer be ignored. In November 2015, the official symbol, Bitcoin, was added to the Unicode standard, granting Bitcoin digital citizenship in the global language. By April 2017, Japan, one of the world's largest economies, officially recognized Bitcoin as a legal method of payment, finally shattering the perception that it was a worthless virtual coin. But as value and influence grew, a dramatic internal conflict erupted, a political civil war of the network. The question at the heart of it was, what should Bitcoin be? A fast payment system or a digital gold store of value? This fundamental disagreement led to the birth of Bitcoin Cash on August 1st, 2017, a fork prioritizing larger block limits to process more transactions. Meanwhile, the Bitcoin Core faction chose to maintain the 1 megabyte limit to protect absolute decentralization, developing the Lightning Network, a second-layer solution designed to make payments fast and nearly free. Bitcoin fought itself to protect its core principles, and in that war, the measuring stick of labor experienced a seismic shift. By late 2017, the value of a single Bitcoin skyrocketed from under 1,000 to a record high of nearly 20,000. Look at this staggering transformation. If in 2009 you earned 1 Bitcoin in mere seconds, by now, a highly skilled engineer on a top-tier salary would have to trade an entire month of labor, or more, just to own a single unit. Bitcoin's power no longer lay in the cheap electricity of its early days. It was now compressed by the capital, the intelligence, and the expectations of an entire generation. Bitcoin had officially become a magnet for high-level human labor, forcing the world to admit this measuring stick could no longer be broken. Then the world changed again. When the global pandemic of 2020 struck, we witnessed an unprecedented monetary experiment. Central banks printing trillions of dollars in just a matter of months. As paper money began to melt under the weight of infinite supply, Bitcoin stepped out from the shadows of skepticism. It became the new anchor of trust. February 2021. Tesla makes a move that echoes through every boardroom on Earth. A $1.5 billion bet on Bitcoin, bringing it onto the balance sheet of one of the world's leading tech giants. Suddenly, Bitcoin is no longer just an asset for individuals. It has become a shield against inflation for the world's most powerful financial institutions. The real turning point arrives in September 2021, when El Salvador becomes the first nation in the world to adopt Bitcoin as legal tender. For the first time in history, a borderless open-source network stands equal to a sovereign currency, requiring every business in the land to accept it as a legitimate form of payment. Then, 2024 marks the ultimate institutionalization. On January 10th, the SEC clears the path for spot Bitcoin ETFs, opening the floodgates for a massive wave of Wall Street capital. Bitcoin is officially coronated as a digital gold, an investment asset with liquidity and prestige rivaling physical gold itself. The climax of this shift comes in March 2025, when the United States government signs a decree to establish a strategic Bitcoin reserve. With this single stroke of a pen, Bitcoin completes its journey from an anonymous string of code to a mainstream asset, sitting side by side with gold in the vaults of the world's leading superpower. Look back at our measuring stick of labor. In 2017, one Bitcoin was worth a single month of an engineer's salary. By 2024, with prices surging past $70,000, it has become the fruit of years of high-level professional work. Bitcoin is no longer a speculative game. It has become a measure of energy and time that cannot be diluted by any government. While paper money continues to melt away, Bitcoin stands firm as the only stable anchor in an endless ocean of inflation. February 2021, Tesla announced it had purchased $1.5 billion in Bitcoin, making it a part of the balance sheet of a leading technology corporation. Suddenly, Bitcoin was no longer an asset belonging only to individuals. It became an inflation hedge for the world's largest financial institutions. But the real turning point came in September 2021, when El Salvador became the first country in the world to recognize Bitcoin as a legal currency. For the first time in history, a borderless open-source network was placed on equal footing with a nation's fiat currency, forcing all businesses to accept it as a legitimate payment method. And then, 2024 marked the ultimate mainstream milestone. On January 10th, the SEC approved spot Bitcoin ETF funds, throwing open the doors for massive capital flows from Wall Street. Bitcoin was officially recognized as digital gold, an investment asset with liquidity and prestige no less than physical gold. The peak of this shift was in March 2025, when the U.S. government signed a decree to establish a strategic Bitcoin reserve. With this decision, Bitcoin completed its journey from an anonymous string of code to a mainstream asset equal to gold in the reserves of the world's #1 superpower. Look back at our measure of labor. While in 2017, one Bitcoin was equivalent to an engineer's monthly salary, by 2024, with a price exceeding $70,000, it had become the fruit of many years of professional labor. Bitcoin is no longer a speculative game. It has become a measure of energy and time that cannot be diluted by any government. As paper money continues to lose value, Bitcoin stands firm as the only stable anchor in an ocean of infinite inflation. Why has this measure grown so strong? The answer lies in its absolute scarcity and its physical foundation. Look at the currency you hold in your hand, which depends on human policy and control. In 1986, Vietnam's M0 monetary base was only 55 billion Vietnamese dong, but by 2016, that figure had ballooned to over 726,000 billion Vietnamese dong. This is the result of fiat currency being created infinitely with just a keystroke, leading to inflation and the melting away of purchasing power over time. In contrast, Bitcoin is programmed to exist in exactly 21 million units. No government or central bank can print more or change this number, creating a perfect artificial scarcity in the digital world. But Bitcoin's value isn't just about scarcity. It has value because it requires actual sacrifice. It does not rely on the promise of an institution or the power of an army to back it. Bitcoin is protected by the laws of thermodynamics and mathematics. To create one Bitcoin, the network requires a massive amount of energy and computational time through the mining process. You cannot print energy out of thin air. You must expend real electricity to transform labor into data blocks. This is proof of work, a physical barrier that makes fraud impossible and turns Bitcoin into a form of digital gold that cannot be destroyed. Instead of placing trust in humans, entities prone to error or deception, Bitcoin forces us to trust mathematics. It is a trustless monetary system where the rules are absolute, transparent, and beyond manipulation. It is a stable measuring stick that helps us revalue our own labor in a world that is losing its sense of value. In summary, Bitcoin is not rising in price. Rather, the fiat currencies around it are melting at a faster rate than ever before. One Bitcoin is always one Bitcoin, but your time and labor are strictly finite. And here's your homework. Take your total annual income and divide it by the current price of one Bitcoin. That number is exactly how many Bitcoins 1 year of your life is worth. That is the true unit of measurement, not dollars, euros, or any form of paper money. Ask yourself, is this number increasing or decreasing every year? Is 1 year of your labor gaining more compressed energy? Or is it being eroded by the old system? Leave your number in the comments. I would love to know how the value of your labor is positioned within this global network. And don't forget to subscribe to the channel to continue exploring new monetary models with me. Systems that are quietly reshaping the future of humanity. See you in the next video.